So I've been thinking.
That's a dangerous habit.
Yeah, so does this mean, with the whole blog post thing, that we should, start completely selling out the podcast with, hey, subscribe to us on Twitter, don't forget to like us on Facebook, and also don't forget to rate us up on iTunes?
To be honest, we should have been doing that from the start. We have 40 likes on Facebook, and we have 4 followers on Twitter.
Hey, to be fair, I'm not any of those because I don't have Twitter.
You know what? I
You
also have
did
not
like
liked
us on
us.
Facebook because I told us you had to.
Yes.
I also made you an admin. It'd be nice if occasionally you'd remember to put up the posts because we're often a week out because I forget.
Oh. I didn't know I was an admin.
Yes.
Oh. Okay. I'll promptly forget that.
I have 190 followers on Twitter, mostly because of the podcast.
Yay.
4 of them, including me, follow the podcast Twitter feed.
Tell us what you think of the podcast with hashtag fucking sellout.
It really wouldn't surprise me if there actually was,
There is. I actually looked it up.
Oh, seriously? Oh,
Yeah.
good God.
Curtis is one of these particularly scummy people that looks at Twitter but does not own a Twitter account.
Indeed.
I only ever look at Twitter when Twitter is the source of glorious, glorious drama.
No. You can
you
also
don't.
look at...
You look at Twitter when I tell you that editors are imploding and you might want to check it out.
That's glorious drama.
You can also look on Twitter for hilarious things like Peter
I bet
Molly
you
did.
Curtis just follows porn stars.
I can't follow anyone because I don't actually have a Twitter account.
So he has them all individually bookmarked.
Yeah, I mean, that's the smart way to do it. That way you don't get caught. God.
Sorry, sometimes I just need to let my hate for you out in little bits.
Just little bits?
It's alright. I live with so much scorn generally that I need to, kick the dog.
Every once in a while.
You're not coming anywhere near the cat anymore.
He said dog, not cat. He said
that's a
dog,
fair
not
point.
cat.
Yeah, okay.
Anyway, the cat likes me. The cat complains when I leave. He doesn't care about you.
That was really, really funny. I mean, literally, he chattered, which is that noise that they make when they get really upset about something, when James was trying to leave.
It's because he lived with him for a year and desperately wants
Somebody
it to
that loves
return.
him.
Yeah.
Fuck off.
He just needs a daddy.
Oh, fuck. I keep forgetting to call in his teeth cleaning. Shit.
You're a terrible single mother.
I just need to put a reminder in my phone. That way I'll actually remember to do it.
So the cat needs a dad, Amanda. He needs a man in his life so he knows, how to behave properly.
Right, I'll get right on that. Anyway.
Okay, I guess we should probably get started, seeing as it's 12:30 now.
Yeah.
Probably.
Might be smart.
Okay. Well, go. Fine.
I was-
I'll,
I was saying, unless you want me to do it.
if you wanted to try doing something, then...
I mean, James, there's a certain sense of consistency of brand.
I don't like the sense of consistency because I get irritated with the fact that we do things a certain way all the time.
Fine.
Mainly...
Hey guys, welcome to Paleo.
Yes.
There's so much red. We're going to have to cut my audio feed there because I also sound like a window-looking retard.
Okay, sorry.
And now Amanda isn't angry with me anymore, so all's good. Okay. Hi guys, welcome to Paleo After Dark, your world-famous bi-weekly podcast on everything you ever need to know about paleo.
Wait, what?
Hashtag fucking sellouts.
Did he just call us Byramus?
No,
I?
world famous. He said world
Oh!
famous, not Byramus.
I thought he said we were Byramus.
I know
If you were Byramus, that would be amazing.
I know you desperately wanted to get a tie-in to what we're actually talking about today, but no, he actually said world famous, which is a much bigger lie. But
So, as we're approaching syndication, I thought it'd be good.
So I was gonna say, if we're that far along, should we be more like movie voice? Follow us on Twitter. In a world with paleo podcasts.
Now we just need to hire a guy that plays a wacky character, but because he's not that good an actor, his name in the show is his actual name.
No, I think usually that happens because they can't actually, like, act well enough to respond to a different name.
I love it whenever I notice that. I'm just like, wow, you are not that bright.
God, now I really want to watch more shitty 80 actions movies.
I can get you all the Schwarzenegger you want on Netflix.
Oh, yeah, that's right. There's a ton of that on there, isn't there?
There is.
Isn't Predator on there?
Maybe.
Because I haven't seen that in a really long time.
I could
Have
show
you
you
seen
the Predator
Commando?
musical.
Oh yes, the Predator musical is amazing.
If it bleeds, we can
YouTube
kill
the
it.
Predator musical.
Okay, after we're done,
Okay.
you have to show me the Predator
Will
musical.
do. You can see it on the big
I
screen.
have to see that. Okay. Anyway.
So as part of Paleo After Dark X, The New Beginning,
We're rebranding.
yeah, we're now rebranding because we're moving platforms.
No, we're not.
We've only got 2 minutes before the first commercial ad, so we better get started quickly. Then again, to be honest, the credits could continue after the ad because I see that happen all the time too. So
Yeah, no, totally.
Oh, you know what we should have? We should have previews like they do in movie theaters.
I think we should start adding gratuitous sex and violence to broaden our appeal.
Hey guys, do you want to go to Stamps.com? I hear
Oh, God,
Stamps.com
no.
is the number one.
That is now the biggest lie of the podcast. The fact that Stamps.com does anything that the post office cannot also do online.
Yeah, the USPS.gov website is actually surprisingly useful. Don't go to Stamps.com.
Did you know that postage is changing? This means the post office is going to be more busy than usual. No, it fucking doesn't, because the same people are going to need to send packages whether or not the postage is different.
I always like Jon Stewart on The Daily Show when, in deference to the standard, like, the post office sucks thing, says, do you realize it's a fucking miracle that I can take this and send it anywhere in the world by just licking one of these and putting it on there?
Yeah, it's true. Mom would send me packages in China all the time. Nothing ever got lost.
You never sent me your address, so I could send you packages.
Oh, I'm sorry.
It's okay. My mum sent me something to England. No, from England. I don't need to talk about this either.
My mom sent me something to England.
We're a special family. What it is, it's essentially a bowling ball. She really wanted something, so she sent it to me, but accidentally put her own address on it.
Oh, God.
No, that never actually happened, and she listens to this, so...
I'm having my mom send me cans of chili, so...
Was that what the phone call was about?
No, the phone call was that Paul Sereno was on Wait, Don't Tell Me, and she wanted to know if I knew them. I've met him once.
Anyway,
What are we talking? Oh, right. We're talking about cool stuff today.
yeah, mainly because we're going to have a spin-off.
It is kind of a spin-off. It's a sequel. Burgess Shale 2. Burgess Harder.
Because the last one was such a burner, wasn't it?
No, this
We
is one of those
figured,
rare
you know
times
what?
that the sequel's better than the original.
So it's Empire? Is this a trilogy then? Are we like the
No,
dark middle
because you
chapter?
see it
No, because James won't let us do Opabinia.
There's reasons for that.
Wait, no. It's not a trilogy. This is just The Wrath of Khan. We've rebranded the whole Burgess Shale thing, and we're redoing it again as though the first one never happened.
Fair enough.
No, you're talking about the new Wrath of Khan, not the actual Wrath of Khan.
No,
No, that
I'm
is-
referring to the
no.
Wrath of Khan, which pretty much ignores the fact that the Star Trek motion picture ever happened.
Yep.
Well, that's because the Star Trek motion picture pretty much ignores the fact it was happening.
That too, yes.
That's the reason.
And
The
I
Star
like-
Trek motion...
I like the motion picture, don't get me wrong.
It's
The uniforms
painfully
do look like they're pod people, but aside from that,
Aside from that.
It's painfully obvious that they told someone, hey, 2001 A Space Odyssey was a really cool-looking movie. Could you do that with Star Trek?
Yes.
Long pauses of pictures of people's faces. Yeah, this will be a great film.
Yeah, now I want to watch 2001 again.
I've only seen it in bits. I've seen both halves, so I've seen half of an interesting film and then half of a lot of heavy breathing.
Yeah, it is like the last 30 minutes is a light show on a dude's face as he breathes, and then in the last 5 minutes, he dies and gets reborn as a space baby.
That's okay. I've been to Pink Floyd shows. I'm used to that.
Good point.
Yep.
A very good point.
So today we are talking about another strange thing out of the Berkshire Shale, but it's easier to know what it actually is.
So it's not
Allegedly.
weird and
Allegedly.
wacky and waney.
Well, it kind of is, but we can quantify the weirdness.
It's maybe a bit anomalous.
Doing Anomalocaris is actually selling out because it's the most popular Burgess Shale thing.
Okay, so this has all been part of your meta joke of joking that we're selling out too.
What joke?
Right. Yeah, I forgot. Shit. Man, that Zappos.com ad that's going to happen in the middle of this is just going to be great.
It's going to be great because
right?
when Fox cans us after 2 episodes, we'll just go on to Comedy Central.
But thank Fox for at least giving us a chance.
That's true. So we are talking about Anomalocaris today. It is, like James said, it is the most famous fossil that ever come out of the Berkshire Shale. And it's got a really cool backstory that a lot of people probably know about, but it couldn't hurt for us to go over it again, especially because we read a whole paper on the evolution, quote unquote, of the history of Anomalocaris, essentially.
Yeah, it's just a fun story at the end of the day.
It really is. Yeah.
So, I mean, I guess, do we just want to delve into talking about the history of how this thing was found, or do we have anything else we want to sort of start with first?
Any more bad puns?
I don't believe I've made a single pun at all this podcast so far. You really need to know what a pun is.
Well,
Yeah.
I'm only looking at you because I'm not looking at Curtis.
He never does anything that's funny or bad. Or funny.
Or good.
Or good.
Or really
That's
anything.
That's the word I was looking for.
Yeah,
All he's
yeah.
done is drunk a beer before we started talking about the podcast stuff.
Uh-huh.
Jesus, Curtis, it's 1 p.m.
Uh-huh.
Oh, man.
I'm the only one of
Do you
you
want some
fuckers
wine?
who's actually...
It's called Indian Summer. We can just kill it together, and then you can
Thank you.
You can see your friends at the bar later.
I was saying, am I the
No,
only
dude.
one
And then
who's
you can come
predicated...
back, and I'll have to let you into your own apartment. It'll
Am
be
I the
great.
only one fucking committed to the concept of this podcast?
She never takes me anywhere that I can buy beer.
No. Also,
mean,
if you
shit.
really want to go to Mass Liquor, we can go.
Shit,
What's
I
was,
need...
was the no at the wine?
Yes.
But I have a funnel. It'll be good.
Oh, Jesus.
Think of how much we can fill you up with. I want to calculate. It would be amazing. Okay, serious. We need to talk about Anomalocaris.
The scientific
Anyway.
conversation of how
We
much...
could do a
can humans-
PSA!
What?
We can do a PSA! We can use our newfound widespread appeal to do a PSA!
For what? The benefits of drinking at 1 p.m.?
Hey, kids, do you want to suddenly feel cooler than you actually are? Can't quite get up the courage to do that thing that other people are peer pressuring you to do? Drink alcohol.
Oh my god, it's like those 1940s ads. Smoking is really good for you. No, really, it is.
No, if it was
Have
the
one for Uncle
1940s, it would be
Sam.
Barney Rubble.
God.
Okay.
Right.
So yeah,
Anomalocaris.
and yeah, Anomalocaris. Yeah. It's
It's
so-
anomalous.
Are you just
The name
fucking
means-
doing the Wawaxia thing?
The name means strange crab.
I thought it meant
Shrimp.
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 Uh,
It's shrimp. Lacaris is shrimp.
we'll have
It's
a
even
look.
written. It's even written in the Collins paper. It's strange shrimp.
Well, are you a fucking crab expert, Curtis? Do you know the difference between a crab and a shrimp? Amanda knows because somebody had 2 lobster dinners on her card, so she knows the difference between a crab and a shrimp.
Oh my God, Curtis! I didn't tell you about that, did I?
This podcast has been brought to you by Red Lobster. Red Lobster.
I checked my card after it had been yoinked. I finally got it hooked up through the new account, and I'm going through my statement on New Year's Eve. Whoever stole my card ate 2 lobster dinners. They bought a really nice hat. They went and spent $50 at a CVS. Then
Okay.
they went to the Art of Shaving and spent more than $200. And then they went to a Starbucks. So whoever stole my card had a fabulous Christmas Eve.
I like the idea that they didn't take
Or,
a date
New Year's
out for a free dinner. They actually just ate 2 lobster dinners.
I have to wonder if they took the date out.
Either that, or you just like, fuck it, I need to get as much out of this card as humanly possible, so I'm gonna order 2 lobster dinners and take 1 home.
But the good thing is, from all the money the NSA is paying us to give them details of all our listeners, we don't have to steal a card to pay for lobster dinners.
The NSA, we're watching you.
Don't.
There's
kill the
really,
person.
I was gonna say, there's really no other thing to, yeah.
So Anomalocaris, which means strange crab.
I'm actually wondering whether or not some of these things could be considered libel. Or at
From
the very
who?
least, false advertising.
I
Advertising for what?
I mean, we're not never mind. And
I'm going to say it means crab because we're a science podcast and people should believe what we say.
Jesus Christ, it means shrimp.
And so
So-
why was it originally named Strange Crab?
Shrimp. Amanda, it's shrimp.
Schmuck.
I'm reimagining this animal now, where instead of having shrimp-like looking arms, it's got whole crabs attached to the side of
Wait,
its face.
I mean, a crab is just a lobster which is bent over on itself because the underside you can see the tergites, the body, and a lobster is just a giant shrimp. It's not actually, but it looks like it.
So if A then B, if B then C, therefore A equals C. Nice job, Socrates. I can't refute that. That logic is impeccable.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
So why is it called Strange Shrimp?
Because it's kind of got a crazy history, because it's so weird, or at least was so different at the time, that yeah, you should probably open that bottle. That effectively there were different parts of it were named
Fine,
different
Jesus
things.
Christ. Yes, just a little bit.
Are you sure?
Yeah.
I don't want
Yes.
to peer pressure you into drinking.
Jesus, it's fine.
Alcohol.
Jesus says it's okay.
Jesus
Well, if
says
Jesus
it's
says
fine.
it's okay.
Well, that's Jesus' blood right there.
Yeah.
It's delicious,
He was-
delicious blood.
He was loaded like 24/7.
Also, I have Jesus' official permission to defend on Jesus' day.
Oh God, that's true. Mm-hmm.
Wait, you were defending on Easter?
Good Friday.
Good Friday.
Good Friday. Nice.
We've already been discussing what needs to go into the PowerPoint.
Oh,
By the way, you need to get me those screen caps.
I'll try, yeah.
what is this going to be? The
You
stations
have
of the
to like it, Brian,
trilobite?
though. I might need to get them off you.
Okay, I'll lend you the DVD. That's fine.
Can't you just screen cap them?
Yeah, I guess I could.
We'll sort something out. Anyway.
Yeah.
Okay.
Wait,
so
are
nothing
you-
libelous or- what?
Are you actually going to end whistling "Always Look on the Bright Side of Life"?
Something like that.
I'm going to get as many crosses as I can into my defense talk. And I'm also going to have Lazarus taxa and then a trilobite looking confused next to a hole with a stone next to it.
Are
That's
you
good.
gonna open that or what?
Do you want it? I mean, I
That's fine.
wasn't particularly going to drink, but
Oh, I
Yeah,
wasn't
come on.
either. Curtis in the background going, yeah, come on, join
maybe
me.
next time, Amanda, we'll get some. We can either use this or we can get some beer or something.
Okay.
But seeing as you're going to have a beer later today,
Yeah, I'm going to Free State for dinner, so.
and you're driving, so you can't have more than one.
Yeah. So
See,
anyway.
responsibility. It's good when you have money.
Anyway, so Anomalocaris, if you look at it, it doesn't really look that much like a shrimp.
Well, the whole animal, no. But the thing is that it was found piecemeal in disarticulated parts, and the each individual part was basically named as something. So the arm was found and it was named as looking like a shrimp. The mouth part was found and it was named looking either like a worm or and everyone is fucking leaving, or a jellyfish. And this is okay. What are you fuckers
No, we're good.
looking at?
We're listening.
Keep explaining.
Keep explaining. And so because of that, there are all these individual things that were named as different animals that were all thought to be trying to put them into... It's partly a cultural background that at the time they were just trying to find what they could recognize and put it into modern groups. So, this looks like a shrimp, it's probably a shrimp. This looks like a jellyfish, it's probably a jellyfish. This looks like a little
it looks
worm.
like a slice of pineapple, but whatever.
Well, yeah,
Right.
it looks like a...
So Anomalocaris was the appendage, which was the body of a shrimp, supposedly.
Yes.
And the spines were then the legs coming down underneath.
Mm-hmm.
Petoia was the mouth
part,
which they called a pineapple ring, and they've actually decided might be some sort of jellyfish. And then the body was called Legania, and they thought it was a sea sponge or a sea squirt of some kind.
something like that. Yeah, some blobby thing.
Much like most of the Burgess shell.
Yeah. Yay.
I mean, much like a lot of soft preservation stuff, it all kind of gets a little blobby. But it's also just the techniques that they had at the time, and you guys are just smiling and staring out the window.
It's because there's a male cardinal out there. And he's eating seed and being happy. Oh, no, there he goes. He went away. Oh, sad.
I'm sorry.
It's okay. Anyway.
If you ever want to come and see more birds like that. When I remember to
my
feed
own
them.
feeder, you know. Yeah, yeah.
I mean, he doesn't have a duck like he mentioned last time, but he apparently does have cardinals, so there you go.
What do you refer to a cardinal as?
Shoot. It's not your grace, because that's Duke.
Mm-hmm. Duke. Yes.
Shoot. It's not magnificence, is it?
No. You're on the right track, though.
Holiness is the Pope.
Indeed.
Balls. Nope, don't remember.
Eminence.
Eminence. That's right. Anyway. Yeah, so...
Paleo After Dark brought to you by the Catholic Church.
I'm actually kind of pissed off at you for stealing that from me. I was waiting for the moment to interject that.
Oh.
LLC, trademark, Italian corporation.
LLC. So, the various parts of it were named after various different things because at the time they were trying to fit them into modern groups. And these were originally named in the early 1800s. Well, sorry, late 1800s, early 1900s.
Yeah. 1902 was a big paper, and 1903 was another one. I'm not entirely sure. Anomalocaris, I think, was one of the first ones, because it obviously had priority. If you ever listened or remember back to earlier podcasts when we talked about naming conventions,
the curse of the 11% beer one,
yes.
where we
Was it
slowly got drunker
Yes.
and drunker as we discussed about names.
I do have Paula's beers in my fridge.
I don't
Two
think
Mad
she's ever
Elf.
getting them.
She could do if she wanted them, but which is why I can't drink one now. Principal priority then is that the oldest name, so the first name has priority or outranks all the others, which is why we call Anomalocaris and not, say, Legania.
Yep.
Mhm.
Even though the bulk of the animal is Legania, essentially. That is the body of the organism.
Well, so that's where it gets really kind of interesting. And that's where I guess this stuff started to get revised, partly just because they brought in Whittington, who has typically been known as being like someone who's really good at trilobites.
Do you mean they brought in? I think he was just at Harvard, and so he just started doing it.
Well, I thought there was a push to have this stuff revised, and at least in the Collins paper, they had mentioned that they had reached out to Whittington.
I think there might have been. The thing was, because it basically all got after Walcott passed away. Very little got done on it, except you had people like Leif Sturmer and Simonetta and Delicave who would occasionally look at stuff without necessarily looking at the original material and hypothesize on things, either suggesting it was something completely weird or trying to shoehorn it into an existing group.
And also Walcott considered himself pretty much the authority of this stuff and sat on some of it. Like, he had a lot of material that he just didn't get around to publishing.
Yeah. And so after that, there were about 40 years where everyone just went, well, that's the Burgess Shale. And aside from using them as being ancestors of a number of modern groups, nobody really looked at them at all. And then in the 80s, well, actually, it's a bit before that.
Late 70s.
Late 70s is when it starts.
60s to the 80s, because I think Morello was early 70s, late 60s, and that was Whittington's first redescription. These things started to get wheeled out, and then he moved back to Cambridge and had a number of grad students that worked on these things as well.
Well, and I think the interesting thing, at least that I wanted to sort of think about, was that, I mean, these are known. The original beds weren't actually known for being Burgess Shale soft body preservation beds. They were known as the trilobite beds because you find a lot of really, robust samples of red lechia, and so things like that. Just the fact that Whittington had an expertise on trilobites. I mean, he was an arthropod person, but he was a trilobite guy. A lot of his prominent work is trilobite stuff. So it's an interesting element of right place and right time for the right people, and almost accidentally coming into place, because it makes sense for Whittington to look at the material coming out of the trilobite beds, given his expertise, but that opens up a whole can of worms that goes somewhere completely different, because you've got a new set of eyes looking at something that's been sitting there for a while. Indeed.
And not just that, but all these things were lumped underneath either Trilobitoidea or Trilobitomorpha, so it was assumed that trilobites were pretty low down in the arthropod tree, and so all these things were just lumped in as being trilobite-like things just because they had homonymous body segments and were arthropods without massively specialized appendages, as far as they could tell.
Exactly.
And so they thought of things like Morello as like a naked trilobite, and you can see in the first papers he actually still refers to things as Trilobitoidea, and as he gets more and more into it and gets a deeper understanding of how these things varied, he eventually drops the term trilobitoid for almost all of these things.
Mm-hmm. But it's I think an interesting way, or an interesting story of science and the process of science, because you've got something where somebody comes into a situation, and not really because they're looking to completely rejuvenate everything or completely reinterpret everything that's there. They're just interested in understanding it under the basal framework of what they have. Like, oh, these are probably trilobite pieces. And then they end up completely changing everything because they're just the right people at the right time, in a good way to basically end up kind of making your career in a weird way.
Yeah. I mean, the interesting thing was that he already had a very strong career as a trilobite worker, so this is almost an extra feather in the hat, whereas a lot of his students went on to have very illustrious careers because they were key to redescribing and revolutionizing how we thought as arthropods based on the Burgess Shale material. It's also, I think we can't have this discussion without bringing in Gould's Wonderful Life and what this did to popularize it. And the interesting fact that despite because it was still going on at the time, despite the fact that this did a lot to popularize it because he threw in his own opinions a lot, the book isn't necessarily always fondly thought of in places by some of the researchers that are basically pimped out in it.
Well, Simon Conway Morris definitely spent a lot of his time in a weird way. It's one of those situations where you're always kind of defined by not only what you stand for, but what you stand against. And it kind of helped to cement Simon Conway Morris's stance on evolution, and particularly his look on the importance of convergence as being completely anathema to Gould's point of view. That basically Gould looked at the Burgess Shale faunas and said, look at all this weird stuff. This shows that life is precious because anything that we have right now was random chance. And there was so little chance given, the direction of evolution that anything like this would ever evolve, because it's just luck of the draw for what survived and what didn't.
The thing is, despite that, and Gould did not, he didn't follow phylogenetics or cladistics particularly. He wasn't overly fond of the concept, mainly because of his ideas on contingency and sort of how convergence worked. Sorry, there was horrible lag there, and
it suddenly stopped, and I couldn't hear anything you just said.
Yeah, mine just says your network connection experiences difficulties. Check your connectivity.
Yeah, mine just popped up with that too.
Okay, hopefully it'll be all right now.
I think we're okay. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, what were you saying? Say it again.
Anyway, so I was saying that as Curtis was saying, with Gould's standpoint, that these things were kind of weird, and the idea that you couldn't be sure at the time which ones would succeed and which ones wouldn't, and that a lot of the things that we lost are body plans or evolutionary trajectories that we never got back. And Gould's standpoint on a lot of these things was he was not particularly fond of cladistics or phylogenetics. I think it disagreed with his views on contingency and also a little bit on how convergence worked. But interestingly enough, the researchers weren't doing phylogenetic or cladistic analyses with these things either. They were describing them and comparing them just by morphology. And even though they were saying these things were weird, they were still saying that these things were on the road to groups we see today. The only exceptions to this at the time were things like Wiwaxia, which we now have a bit of a better understanding of, and things like Anomalocaris.
Mm-hmm. And I think just the point that I was trying to make a little bit earlier, though, was that it's interesting that paper managed to be kind of in a negative way, but still groundbreaking to forming Simon Conway Morris's views, because he very much took a very opposite approach, that due to convergence, a lot of forms just are the only things that make sense. And so he, in a lot of ways, throughout his later career, basically spent a lot of his theoretical time trying to show the opposite evidence of Gould's wonderful life.
Yeah. I got interviewed by him at Cambridge, actually, and our discussions, the two main discussions we had were, he asked me about how many legs the Eurypterids tend to walk on, because he thought there was something in reducing the number of legs that you walk on land, because a lot of things go down to, 3 pairs. You've got insects, and a lot of the spiders will reduce the first couple of pairs of legs, so they're really only walking maybe on 3 or 4 is the traditional one. Also, then I happened to mention that I like sharks, and then we talked for about half an hour on sharks and why sharks are amazing, and he was very interested in sharks because of they display viviparity, and he was very interested in convergence on live birth in animals, because there are some reptiles that do it, and now we know, we didn't back then, that placoderms are doing it as well. Mm-hmm. Which means that maybe it's not convergent, but anyway.
So yeah, that group went and reevaluated a lot of the Burgess Shale material, and one of the things that they reevaluated was that they found better material, or at least went through some of the material that was there and prepared it in a different way. Like, actually, it's not just a perfectly flattened 2D specimen. There's actually layers there, and you can slowly peel off layer after layer of the carbon and reconstruct the animal. Well, it's not a carbon. Is it apatite? I can't remember what the actual Burgess Shale.
They're silica preserved.
Okay.
Yeah.
So after peeling off layers of this stuff, they reconstructed these animals and found that, of course, well, the little arm parts are actually connected to a body trunk, and that instead of just being like some little shrimp with some weird spines coming off of it, Anomalocaris is actually a frontal grasping appendage of this much larger animal, which has these huge like body flaps, like it sort of swims through undulation. It's got these big arms right in the front, two big bulging eyes on the side of the head, or maybe somewhere up top of the head, depending on the type of Anomalocarid we're talking about, and this kind of circular looking, basically pineapple ring of a mouth.
Which has... Sorry?
I was going to say, it's your typical great appendage arthropod.
Wow. That's another interesting discussion. Very interesting discussion, because people like to debate where Anomalocaris goes and its relation to great appendages and arthropods.
I think that might be the after the break discussion.
Yeah. But the cool thing about the mouth as well is that they showed that instead of just being a bizarre pineapple ring, there was almost like a conveyor belt of sclerotized teeth inside it.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
And they put 2 and 2 together with trilobites, which appear to have bizarre injuries, and basically turned Anomalocaris into the great white of the Caribbean, the great white of the the great white of the Cambrian,
the great white of the Canadian Caribbean.
And that this thing was. Some of them got very big, but on average it was about 2 foot, which for Cambrian times was still really large. And this got interpreted as basically swimming around, grabbing things off the seafloor and eating them. So it was your first apex predator.
Mm-hmm. Potentially. That's
yes. Something else that we'll discuss in the next part.
So that's kind of cool. It gets more complicated when some people started to re-examine the diversity of Anomalocarids, that actually looking at the variability of some of the fossils that you get in there. And they started to find that while, yes, what we call Anomalocaris, there is an animal that has those exact arms in the front, that if we find things that have a mouth part that's more like Patoia was, like truly an exact replica of Patoia, it has different...
More diamond-shaped.
It has different shaped arms, and it has different shaped head. And so that was originally... But it also has the body part of what was originally called Legania. And there was like some back and forth about like originally
they thought that Patoia was the Anomalocaris mouth.
Yeah, it was the Anomalocaris mouth. But then they said, okay, well there's obviously this different like animal here, and then they called it Legania because one of those was considered to be a composite fossil and Legania had preference. But then they re-examined the material and actually now they call it Patoia. The thing they called Legania, they now call Patoia. And there was another part of the animal that was called Herdia, right? That Herdia is also a different Anomalocarid.
Herdia they originally thought was a bivalved arthropod. It's got this bizarre head shield, which looks quite similar to things called Isoxis and stuff like that. There were also these bizarre, more teardrop-shaped plates that they couldn't work out what they were, and they found some not only connected, so these 2 types of plates actually connect to each other, but also on top of the body of an Anomalocarid. And so Herdia is an Anomalocarid which has this enlarged, very big sclerotized head shield overlapping, going from the top and overlapping down the side as well.
Yeah, reconstructions of it, save for the fact that obviously it's got the little arms on it, it almost makes it look like an arthropod whale. Like it's got a similar tuniform kind of shape to it. That head shield makes it a little bit more aerodynamically looking, and it's so.
And I mean, there are some arguments as to whether or not the head shield is flipped forward or not. The original descriptions of it have it as projecting forward from the head, and that's what the authors still interpret it as. I have seen other people suggest that maybe, seeing as maybe these are molts or decay, that maybe the head shield actually is further back and goes along the back of the head and covers and overlaps partially the body, and that it's been flipped forward on this specimen, and that's why it has this almost, frankly, kind of bizarre projection coming out so far in front of the appendages on the head.
Yeah, it is weird. I mean, the appendages do come down, and again, it looks like in the position of a whale's mouth where you'd see like baleen or something. It's just these little spiny appendages coming down out of the head shield.
Yeah. And we now know as well that Anomalocaris are found globally. They're known from China and Australia, as well as places closer to home for us, like Nevada and Utah.
They're also not restricted to the Cambrian. We found them into
No.
the Devonian as well.
Oh, no, that's true.
Yeah.
Yeah. The youngest one is potentially Devonian.
Yeah, it's
Yes, Devonian.
Shindahanes. It's known from
Yeah.
the Hunteric slate. That thing is bizarre. Again, some people suggest the interpretations might be a little off on it. But again, this has what appears to be some sort of head shield, these bizarre, almost weather vane-like wings sticking out the side, and appendages that not only have ventral spines, but spines that appear to be facing each other as well, so nobody quite knows what that was doing. There's also large, like meter-long at least, Anomalocaris described from the Ordovician. It's currently awaiting a proper name, but they've been found in Morocco and places like that.
I mean, it certainly does suggest that this is a group that had a lot of diversity and actually largely disappeared, mostly from probably closing of a taphonomic window, and had a history that spanned much larger than we can really preserve.
Yeah.
So basically, it kind of is a weird situation where if you can almost imagine the Anomalocarid taxonomy like an hourglass. It started with a lot of very disparately named things that were all the various parts that got named different things, and then it all got sheared together and said, oh no, wait, no, it's this one thing, it's called Anomalocaris. And then we re-examine the material like, well, actually, yeah, it's an Anomalocarid, but there's like a bunch of different Anomalocarids, and so we fan back out and we now have a much more diverse picture. But the key difference is we've changed from trying to link them into just being things that we can see on the beach at a day-to-day basis to being extinct groups that we couldn't possibly have imagined.
Yep.
So I guess that kind of covers the history. Do we want to take a quick break and come back and talk about some of the... Okay.
Relationships and modern interpretations.
Interpretations, yeah.
All right. You can't hear a damn thing I hear.
No one can hear you. It's okay.
Yeah, that's what I figured.
Oh, God damn it. Ask him what beer that is.
What?
Oh, wait. What beer that is? Tell me what he says.
It's Dreamweaver wheat.
What?
It's Dreamweaver wheat.
Dreamweaver.
Yes.
Yes.
That's copyright. Macromedia.
Yeah, exactly.
If we could get a beer sponsorship, that'd be great. Oh no!
Yeah,
By the way, we're going to do a microbrewery and we're going to make Pale After Dark beer because we have a logo now.
We do have a logo.
So Amanda, if you want a decent beer of some form, we can pick one.
And then make a really shitty version of it because that's what home brewery is.
Doesn't matter, we're not going to drink it. Okay.
Okay. Are we back?
Yeah.
I guess, yeah, I'll just need to... I think picking up a beer or two for the house won't hurt.
I'll see what I can do.
No.
I can walk to Alvin's, and if you want anything, you can just tell me what to get, because I can just go with my bag empty and just come back with stuff.
Well, I mean, next time I go to Petco, I'll stop at Mass Liquor, so if you need anything from there, I can just grab something that I think you'll like, which, keep in mind, I have bad taste in beer, so I don't know.
I don't particularly like beer, so it's all good.
Okay.
Or I can come with you, and then we can look at the ferrets.
Ferrets. They do have ferrets.
You can get Mad Elf at Mass Bev.
That is true.
Not Mad Elf, sorry. Hoppin' Frog.
Oh, that's right. Ooh, that's right.
Hoppin' Frog is really
What are you
good.
doing?
I hate myself, okay?
Okay.
He's being a
That's why you were
hopping frog.
dancing?
He's being a hopping frog.
Oh.
I make myself a spectacle of myself to amuse you, and you all you do is...
Right.
James is just
anyway,
still James's natural position is to be on the stage, and James is still waiting for that one moment where we're finally on YouTube.
Do you know what? Give me a podium and 4,000 armed men, and I'll show you what I could do with a stage.
This message has been brought to you by Johnson & Johnson Lube.
Anyway.
I was going to say that look and then the click, I thought you were just, yep, that's what I thought.
For those of you at home, James has just hung up on us.
The sad thing is that's the second time I tried to do it. Wouldn't do it the first time.
And apparently it wouldn't do it the first time.
No, wouldn't do it the first time.
That's what I figured. Like, you said, it was really sad that your comedic timing was missed on that one. Just like, click. And then there was like a look of confusion on your face for a brief second, but then you kept the composure to still look pissed off and then pressed it again.
Okay.
So now that we're back, we're going to talk about more Anomalocaris.
Yeah.
But different parts of Anomalocaris. Different things
We're gonna
that are
break it
related to
up into
Anomalocaris.
I nearly asked you what your favourite part of Anomalocaris was, and I nearly said it in a voice that was way more lascivious than it had to be.
I like the army bits.
Really?
I want a picture of you doing that. I just want footage of that, and I'll just watch it all the time, every day.
Okay.
You like the army bits.
So Amanda likes arms. And bitey bits.
Army bits. Army bitey bits.
What are you doing, Curtis?
I'm making really, really creepy sounds into the microphone.
How's that different to when you talk?
Not really all that different. It more likely to be put on a watch list,
I thought you already were on one.
No matter how many times you guys repeat that, it doesn't actually make it true. You know that, right?
I don't think you know the Disney power of just believing.
So you're just going to go home and clap your hands and believe that I'm on a government watch list?
When you wish upon a star.
Your friends go to jail.
To be honest and to be fair, we're probably all on government watch lists.
I just rub this lamp, and then a genie comes out and goes, 3 wishes, Curtis in jail.
Oh, God.
Okay, do you want a second wish? For life. Third, for something really dumb.
This episode has been brought to you by Disney.
I thought you realised that we have... I don't have an end for that sentence.
It's okay.
Anyway.
So
let's
the
talk
second
about
part...
the arms.
The second part, there are a couple of bits of Anomalocaris. No, I don't mean bits of Anomalocaris. What do I mean?
Oh yeah, you
There
need
are
the bits.
aspects of... I hate you so much. There are... help, Amanda.
Right, so there are multiple interpretations of... exactly what Anomalocaris actually is. How it's related... Well, that's not true. We know what it is. It's an arthropod.
Wow.
Well, very closely related to arthropods.
We're pretty sure it's an arthropod, but there are
Yeah.
still people
It's
who...
an arthropod, like... Yeah, so where it is in relation to arthropods and what its mode of life is.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Also, some of those pictures really looked like it had compound eyes. Has there ever been any progress made on that front? Because in all the reconstruction, it doesn't look like it has compound eyes, but I swear to God, looking at some of the photographs, it really did look like the eyes were compound.
You never reconstruct compound eyes as looking like compound eyes. It's so fiddly.
That makes sense.
And what you do, basically, individual lenses have been described for disarticulated eyes ascribed to Anomalocaris, but they're not articulated. I think articulated eyes showing lens structure has been found, so yes, they most likely had compound eyes.
Okay, that's what I thought. I just couldn't remember right off the top of my head.
So in terms of its relationships, there are basically two... There were two points of view. Amanda mentioned great appendage arthropods earlier on, and we've mentioned these things before.
And yeah, great appendages were just specifically referring to the big arms on the Anomalocarid itself, and trying to say that other things that have really large inflated arms in the front of their body might be related.
Yeah.
Yeah, this is not a trick by paleontologists. By great appended arthropod, we just mean it had really, really big, giant.
I mean, they might have been just like
front.
awesome. Like if you just looked at them, they like glisten in the sun.
That's
Or
true.
every single time you look at it, there's just a wow, yeah, and then it puts on sunglasses.
This is complicated somewhat because
This has been brought to you by the
CSI
CSI Miami.
Because there are some groups of arthropods which are called megachirons, which basically are united by having short, great appendages. And so, Anomalocaris are generally widely considered to be the sister group to arthropods, so basically the closest ancestor to all other arthropods that we know of. Some people, however, have suggested that maybe they're more closely related to a particular group of arthropods called chelicerates, so those that include spiders and scorpions and eurypterids and horseshoe crabs and that sort of stuff. However, that's never been retrieved in any analysis. I could see their reasoning behind it, but this is a polarity issue. Maybe enlarged appendages are primitive for arthropods, and we also don't entirely know which appendage on Anomalocaris it is. Back to the brains issue, we don't know if it's the front, second, third, or front, second, or third segment. It's actually potentially in front of all of them, which would make it something completely different to the other great appendages that we see.
Yeah, as James has said when we were talking about the Lagging Brains podcast, we were talking about how it's really important to know what actual appendages are being attached or where they're originating from, because if those things are basically coming through similar ontogenetic processes, through similar development, then they're maybe more likely to be also homologous. And by that I mean evolutionarily related. So it's possible that you could have things that are growing big appendages, but they're just growing a different appendage, and we can't really tell that right now, given the data that we have.
Mm-hmm. The really cool thing is that there was a paper that just came out that redescribed Anomalocaris, and while we already knew a lot about it, we're really getting a good idea for this thing as an animal now.
Mm-hmm.
I'm talking about the paper that came out like 2 weeks ago.
You mean
the most recent one?
The one that's online, but not...
Yeah, it's in early view.
Yeah. And the really cool thing that I got from that, aside from all the other bits, was that it had a little cap.
What?
Yeah.
It had a little cap. It has a head shield.
Okay.
The thing that it wasn't in the paper that just came out, but it was a paper that came out earlier this month, where they actually had musculature preserved, which is just phenomenal, and that's really, really cool too. So we actually have an understanding of what the muscle attachments were.
And also some potential understanding in the previous paper before this, which similar collection of authors, but of the potential gut and digestive tract as well, which is kind of cool.
Yeah. So we're really beginning to get to see the inside of this creature, and as I say, with a head shield like it has, and there's a lot of discussion about the limbs and whether or not they were what we call sclerotized or not, whether they're arthrodized. So basically, there is a certain thing called a pivot joint, and a pivot joint works because the articulation from one segment to another is at one is like off center, and then they articulate against each other by pivoting around this fixed position. And there's been some debate, are the sclerotized appendages of Anomalocaris homologous, are the same as the sclerotized appendages that we see in other arthropods. And what they've been able to show now is that not only does it have a pivot joint, but the arthrodial membrane, the soft stuff in between, shows the same striations and the same structure as arthrodial membrane in other arthropods. So we're really cottoning on to this thing being an early offshoot of the arthropod lineage.
And that's the amazing thing about this soft tissue preservation that we're getting out of these Burgess specimens. It's just absolutely amazing.
Yeah, I mean, it's certainly exceptional preservation of things that we otherwise wouldn't have any record for.
Yeah. So, I mean, and then there are other things as well to do with like the tail fin and the structure of that.
And there was a lot of talk about the striations of the body flaps as well, and what those might actually be, and that's still technically up in the air, but the general consensus, I guess, seems to be that they're most likely used for strengthening of the body flaps for locomotion. But there are
Yeah.
like these little like fibrous striations throughout the little flaps on the body.
Yeah.
Yep.
And you can also, I mean, they've now got confirmed 3 small flaps at the head behind the big appendages. This gives it what we term a arthropod head of a frontal appendage plus 3 other segments. Also, aside, I don't know if Anomalocaris shows this, but Herdu and a number of the other ones do show that they had fibrous-like elements across the back, which may be used for respiration.
Mm-hmm.
So they maybe had gills going across the back of the animal on these kind of foliated blades.
Mm-hmm.
That's kind of very interesting. Some Anomalocaris as well potentially show having a more walking type limb beneath the flaps.
Oh, okay. No, I understand there's really good scientific discussion we could have here, but when they said walking limbs, as I was reading through, I guess, the most recent daily paper and like rejecting the whole notion that there was any walking limbs, in my head, I was just imagining that like 1950s cartoon thing where if they lift up their pants, they automatically have like a perfectly shapely woman's leg with a high heel on. So just imagining Anomalocaris with 2 pairs of those legs just walking around. It's because I am a child. But let's continue with the debate on walking limbs of these animals.
Are you suggesting that Anomalocaris was the Jessica Rabbit of the Cambrian?
Yes, they were desperately trying to hitchhike in the Cambrian, so they just hiked up their skirt and did an homage to the Clark Gable movie It Happened One Night. Which, by the way, whenever you see that in a cartoon, it's a reference to It Happened One Night, and nobody remembers that movie, but everybody knows the joke.
I was going to say, I had no idea that was the case.
It's a really good movie.
I'm sure Amanda's seen it because she does like her.
I haven't seen it.
Okay, you do like some of your older movies.
Yeah, that's one I haven't seen.
See, it's the 1930s, and it's a guy. It's basically kind of the movie for all rom-coms, but that's kind of like a really mean thing to say because it's a quite good film, and every other movie is kind of trying to ape it, or they're trying to ape Annie Hall or Manhattan. But yeah, it's these 2 people end up together on a road trip, and they hate each other, and then they fall in love. But it's at one point, it's 1930s, they have to share a hotel room. They have to share one bed, so they build like a pillow fort in between because she can't be in another bed with a man. And she calls it the Walls of Jericho. And it ends with the line, well, I guess we'll be tearing down the walls of Jericho.
Nice.
Because they're going to get it on. But it's the 1930s, so they can't say I'm going to fuck you or something like that. Because, you know.
Could, but only in Disney movies.
Yeah, of course. Disney, a family company. This message is brought to you by
Marvel
Disney.
once had a superhero have sex with a dinosaur, so...
Yes, they did. God.
So the potential of walking legs on Anomalocaris before eventually every single corporation in the entire fucking world descends upon us with their lawyers.
Okay, yeah. So it was suggested that some Anomalocaris had walking legs beneath the flaps, and this would be very important because, as Amanda misheard earlier, arthropods have biramus limbs, which means that they have a dorsal flap and a ventral leg.
So that would be evidence that Anomalocaris would be biramus, or some Anomalocaris.
As a sort of proto-arthropod leg. I'm sorry, I was just thinking of you having flaps. And so this probably isn't the case. There's no evidence of walking limbs. However, some Anomalocaris that have been found and are in the process of being described, and I think this has been talked about at conferences, so I think we can discuss it, seem to have 2 rows of flaps. And so this could indicate that maybe these are sort of proto-biramus rims, but the early legs maybe were flap-like and not necessarily limb-like.
Which would be interesting.
Especially when you look at the earliest legs from things like Fusionhurids, and these are very simple, just homonymous segments that just socket into each other. And when you put that with the fact that Anomalocaris flaps have these bizarre striations, I begin to wonder if you can sort of see a way that you can begin to see segmentation on some of these flaps.
Well, this is a little bit of an aside, but we have the We have legs for Cambrian Burgess shell trilobites, don't we?
Yes.
So
Holonoidis serratus.
And so, how simple are they? Or are they already fairly advanced?
They have differentiation on the podomeres. So each
Okay.
segment, you have often the seventh segment is elongated and hourglass shaped.
I mean, that's also kind of an element of perspective because, like, trilobite limbs are varied across multiple groups. So,
No,
like,
well,
are
that
they
is
simple
true, yeah.
compared to trilobites, or are they simple compared to arthropods in general? Is a whole other can of worms.
That is true.
Part of the problem with that is that trilobites are used as the archetypal arthropod, when in a number of ways they're very distinctly derived.
They're really
they
weird.
It's a problem with assuming that common means normal, and that's not always the case.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, definitely true.
Yeah, I just wasn't aware if we had any idea of something, a primitive leg type that you could look at in the Burgess.
Well, we've got lots of leg types in the Burgess. It's just that they most of them seem to be arthropod type limbs or megachiron.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, it all comes down to that sticky situation of polarization. Like, do we know what a primitive arthropod limb looks like? We know what potentially a more basal modern arthropod limb looks like, but that's not necessarily a good indicator of what the ancestral leg looked like.
Mm-hmm.
So, I guess we've talked about shapely arthropod legs. Do we want to start talking about what those things were eating, potentially?
Yeah, we
Yeah,
can
sure.
discuss mode of life.
I mean, unless anybody has anything else to say about arthropod legs.
No.
Lots, but nothing relevant or useful.
Yeah, nothing that...
So as I mentioned earlier, Anomalocaris is for quite a time being called the Great White of the Cambrian. This is partly because of, obviously the morphology suggests it was grabbing things and eating them.
It's also really fucking big. I think that's another thing.
huge,
Like,
yeah.
compared to everything else around it, it's huge.
And plus, they were finding trilobites with chunks missing out of them.
This is the thing. A lot of this research has come from trilobite workers finding chunks missing from bits of trilobites and
Don't forget the poop.
suggesting that
Lots of poop.
we'll get onto that.
Okay.
And suggesting that the only thing that could have bitten these things was Anomalocaris. It's the only thing that's big, and it's the only thing that would possibly be eating these things.
Well, there
as
was
Curtis mentioned.
There was early dissent right from the very beginning that the shape of the bites seem like they don't fit well with the pineapple-shaped mouth.
Although you've got to bear in mind that the shape of the mouth itself is often more square-shaped.
Yeah.
And then, as Curtis mentioned, you've got a lot of coprolites with trilobite bits in them, bits of exoskeleton. Aside from the bite shapes being a bit weird, the other thing to bear in mind is that trilobites have a calcified external exoskeleton, which means that if you're going to break that, you need something that's stronger than calcite. And the Anomalocarid mouth is non-mineralized.
Which
it's only sclerotized.
Again, for anyone that doesn't know calcite, it's limestone. It's rock, basically.
It's like crabs today.
Yeah. Oh, it's actually not entirely the same because crabs take their arthropod skin, their cuticle, and they reinforce it with calcite, whereas trilobites are thought to have not reinforced their cuticle, but actually secreted like an even thicker shell than a crab would.
Yeah, which also means that it's very interesting when everybody thinks about trilobites trying to swim, because I'd like to see how a stone can swim.
Well, that's why every single time they've made
pumice.
It's why every single time they've made models of these things, they sink like a stone.
I found pumice on a beach once, just floating up. I picked it up. I assume it's real pumice. It could have just been somebody's bath thing that they threw out, but anyway. So there's those issues.
Yeah.
And And then there's other things to bear in mind as well. From there's the Anomalocaris side of things, and then there's the trilobite side of things. So if Anomalocaris, I guess we should talk about whether or not Anomalocaris could do this first, and then we'll get on to if not, what else was.
Right, because people have argued that the mouth couldn't even move in that manner, right?
The people have argued that the mouth isn't the right shape to make those bites. People have made the argument that the fossils suggest that the mouth wasn't hard enough to really crack any sort of rock, and that it folds too easily, and that it's not likely to have been used as a biting mechanism.
Bear in mind, people have also suggested that the mouth was a modified great appendage, and that it had 3, and that the mouth was just one that curled around and then fused. So not all the ideas are good. Interestingly enough, if you look at your standard arthropod mouth, and I'm thinking of horseshoe crabs because I've dissected them, I mean, the arthropod mouth itself is basically an anus that's at the front. It is just this kind of... Stop laughing.
I'm just thinking of the South Park episode where they stick things up their butts and then poo out their mouth.
That can happen. Well, not quite like that, but... Reverse peristalsis is a nasty thing.
Yeah, reverse peristalsis is a nasty thing.
It's also on House once, I think. Anyway.
It is.
God damn it, what was I saying?
Not all the ideas are good.
Not all the ideas are good.
The mouth. But the mouth of things like Limulus, which is basically just this circular area with folded membrane around it, looks actually a fair bit like... If like an Anomalocaris mouth, if you were just to sclerotize a ring around it, it'd look almost exactly the same. So it might be that the Anomalocaris mouth isn't that different from normal arthropod mouths. It's just the fact that it's sclerotized around it a bit more than the others have.
So one thing they were within some of these revisions, they were talking about how some of these are likely durophagous, as in eating things that are durable. Or hard shell parts, based entirely around the limbs. Are they assuming that the limbs are essentially ripping them apart or battering them so that they can eat it?
That's the way it'd have to be. If you look at the claws, they often look like splayed forks. They actually look quite a bit like lobster forks. And if you were to get the spines in between the segments of the body of, say, a trilobite and then flex outwards, you could presumably prise apart the body segments so that you get the soft stuff underneath.
So it's like shelling oysters or things like that. You're just ripping apart whatever you need and then just sucking out the gooey stuff in between.
Yeah. Yep. There have also been suggestions that maybe they only preyed on freshly molted trilobites because they'd have still been soft.
Yeah.
The trouble is, if trilobites appear to molt in mass, it's presumably then maybe relatively seasonal, means there's a large part of the year which you have nothing to eat.
Well, and then there's another part where basically a lot of the things with bite marks don't show their hard parts, but they don't show any evidence of being healed. So it's not like they die. It's whatever bit them killed them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So there are all these sort of things feeding into it. There has been recent work on the mouth when they said Patoia was the correct name instead of Legania, and they've suggested that the mouth must have acted more like a vacuum, so if it flexes down and up, it could generate suction, and that it sucked up whatever food it was going for out of suspension. And while this doesn't necessarily tell you what it is, it does tell you that maybe it wasn't acting as a rasper or breaking shell, and that if things were taking things with hard parts, it was the appendages doing all the work.
Okay. So kind of like a fly just sort of sucks things up. It just kind of was going vacuuming up things up and eating that way.
Yeah.
I mean, not the same mechanism, obviously, because the fly is vomiting up and then sucking up the things that it vomits, but still.
Yeah. And so it really does look like the bite marks we see on trilobites can't have been made by Anomalocaris. What people hadn't thought of, this is something that always struck me as a bit odd, is that you assume, why does that have to be a single bite? If you look at a caterpillar eating a leaf, it'll do this big scything arc through a number of different bites. And then there's also the fact that arthropods frequently eat their own molts in order to get the nutrients back. And if you think about the amount of nutrients and minerals that must be in a trilobite exoskeleton, seeing as they basically calcify it, you could see some trilobites might partially eat part of their own molts in order to get some of the calcium back. And this is what was suggested in a paper on, I think it was either Australia or China, and they said the only things that were the size and would have had the skeletized mouth parts enough in order to create the bite marks on the trilobites would have been other trilobites.
Well, another thing that they actually suggest is even more fundamental: cannibalism. That that the only other large thing that was there that would eat red Lakia is red Lakia.
Yeah. So, which is pretty interesting, and this sort of upturns a lot of what people thought about the Cambrian food web. Maybe Anomalocaris isn't always at the top, and even if it isn't the only predator. Things are eating each other fairly regularly.
I mean, the natural food web is more complicated too. I mean, we can still have top predators and at the same time also have, cannibalism and other various forms of...
Yeah. Well,
yeah, it would almost make more sense to have a more complex interaction.
Well, some of the earliest known Eurypterids are from the Ordovician of Ohio, and they're a very bizarre species, but they're all found from a hypersaline lagoon. They're pretty much the only thing found in there, and there are just thousands of coprolites, presumably Euryptid coprolites, with other bits of Euryptid in them, and this is because they were in a bad situation, and there were hundreds upon hundreds of this one species trapped, and all they were doing was eating each other, because otherwise they'd starve.
That's an entirely unsustainable population. There has to be something else.
Oh yeah, I mean they're all dead now, so. But I mean, I think...
But there has to have been some amount of success for them to have fossilized in the first place, right? Because they probably would have had to hit certain numbers.
Well, not necessarily, unless it was a catastrophic event.
I mean, I guess.
Well, this is an ash flow deposit. What this is a very unusual environment. Normally, they wouldn't have been doing that, most likely, but they got trapped there, and that's what they were doing when they then got fossilized.
Okay, so it was an ash flow to flash freeze that environment, because otherwise I can't imagine something like that would be sustainable for long enough for the incidental, random chance of fossilization to preserve any of that.
No, what you don't often end up with is just one fucking big one
that
just
ate
be
all
sitting
the others.
in there. Yeah,
it's the mass gator, the one that ate all the rest of them.
Yeah. So that might be what was going on with trilobites. We're seeing either a degree of cannibalism or of molt eating. But this then does leave what Anomalocaris are doing. And this is where, once again, the variety and the differences in morphology come into play.
Yeah, they're... The consensus, at least in this most recent paper, is that it's possible some of them, like Anomalocaris, were still durophagous. They were still eating hard-shelled animals. And this is, again, largely due to the fact that they've got these huge grasping claws, so the assumption is, well, they're probably using them for something. But things with smaller claws like Patoia and especially Herdia, they're thinking they might have been doing something else that either was eating, soft-shelled things or scavenging or...
Yeah, and I mean... Even if you eat hard parts like Monhorseshoe crabs will grind up bivalves, but they also eat a lot of worms, You take what you can a lot of the time. And some of these appendages that you see in Anomalocaris are very, very weird. They have very, very fine spines on them that almost form a sort of mesh.
Mm-hmm. So thinking that some of them might have been catching or filtering things.
Yeah, and this is, again, more work... undergoing, but it's been presented at conferences, and so there are some Anomalocaris that people are seriously suggesting were some form of filter feeder, and they're then likening them to things like baleen whales and your giant, the largest sharks are all filter feeders as well.
Whale
the three
shark,
biggest.
yeah.
And then things like Leedsichthys, this Jurassic fish. This was a giant fish, and again. That was found to be a big filter feeder. Mm-hmm. And it's interesting if that's the case that you've got this ecological niche occurring as early as the Cambrian.
Yeah, I mean, it certainly adds to the notion that the Cambrian was much more diverse ecologically than we previously had thought.
Yeah, I mean, throwing into this an unrelated paper, but it's just been... We've just had trilobites described from an intertidal zone, and... That's interesting, considering almost everyone, considered that the only things living in the Cambrian could only lived in fully marine environments. So there's a lot more going on ecologically in the Cambrian, maybe, than we've particularly given it credit for.
Yeah, with those traces, don't they even suggest that they might have been like surviving subaerial exposure?
I'm not sure. That's the way it almost reads in all the press releases, but I don't think in the paper they actually say that. What they're suggesting for that is that as things were that close to the terrestrial realm, you could see things would very easily terrestrialize straight from the marine, whereas because of amphibians, everyone tends to assume that to terrestrialize you've got to go through a freshwater phase first.
Yeah, it's interesting. It's part of an ongoing bit of research to show that terrestrialization isn't just as simple as following the path that vertebrates took, that each individual group can have a different path, and that we don't just have to keep going the freshwater to terrestrial realm. But it has, partly because of the way that it's written, some of it's abstract and some of its parts, but it has been misinterpreted as terrestrial trilobites.
Yeah, the abstract really almost, you could be forgiven for reading the abstract and thinking, oh, these trilobites walked around on land. They don't say that at all in the paper, and they're very careful not to suggest that at all in the paper, but the abstract is what everyone gets, and it's, it's gaining interest. It's just it gains some interest through some writers misunderstanding what the paper was necessarily about.
I mean, partly you can forgive some people a little bit for the need to have something interesting in your paper. Like, in order to get something read,
Totally.
You've got to have something out there. I mean...
Yeah, you have to have a hook.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And the subtitle trilobites in the Cambrian is cool enough, but you can understand them for trying to get something maybe a little bit extra.
Well, especially if you think of the average person, they're going to be like, well, they still lived in the sea, so what?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So that's cool. That's interesting, and we're looking at Anomalocaris filling a number of different ecological roles than just being these big predators.
Yeah, which basically continues the Burgess Shale tradition of making it so that the Cambrian looks more and more ecologically diverse right from the very start than we would have ever imagined, as opposed to just being this kind of desolate wasteland where then ecology slowly builds, and then because of competition we get more and more diverse forms. It seems that right from the very beginning a lot of vacant niche space was just being used. Does anyone have anything else they want to add about Anomalocaris? And does anyone want to mispronounce it as Anomalocaris or Anomalocaris or any other things that we want to call it?
Apparently, Anomalocaris is the way it's meant to be pronounced.
Yeah, Anomalocaris is supposed to. Anomalocaris, I guess, would be the way that you'd have to pronounce it.
Or you could be American, Anomalocaris.
Anomalocaris? I feel like you got to get like a little bit of a twang to that.
Yeah, you've got to go for the southern drawl with that one.
Yeah.
Would you like to, Amanda?
No, my
Aw.
southern drawl has never been good.
I like your southern drawl. It's amusing.
You've actually recorded your southern drawl on the podcast before, and I thought it sounded pretty decent.
What was the pronunciation again?
Anomalocaris.
Oh, Anomalocaris if you're going to be...
Sorry,
Anomalocaris.
Anomalocaris.
Yeah, it's not so bad. It's not bad. It's not bad. This...
No, it hurts. It physically hurts to do that.
It actually...
Now you know what it's like being me.
Wait, everything you do physically hurts?
Well, yes, but I mean, aside from that, having to listen to people pronounce things incorrectly. Not incorrectly,
He's just mad
differently.
that we say aluminum.
You know, you spell it differently too. You're generally dumb.
We do spell it differently. And it's
That's because of a
true.
typing error or something stupid like that.
Yeah, it is
But,
entirely
I mean,
because of a typing error.
At least you spell it differently. What I find silly is the fact that you pronounce basil and basil differently because you don't want to think that you're eating basil, your friend.
Yeah, pretty much.
Because you don't understand context.
We've designated one as a name and one as a plant.
Yes.
So
And the fact
Man,
that I
I
have to
need
say
to pick up
water
some
or no
Thai
one
basil.
understands what I'm talking about.
water.
Water. You need to order water. If I order water, people are
Oh,
like,
if you were in the
"Huh?"
northeast, people would totally understand.
Wait, you want water? You want some water? You want to sit here? Or you want to sit at the bar? You want some water?
We had for Wes's defense, Erin asked if we wanted Coke or Pop, and I just looked at her and goes, "I don't know what either of those are."
Fuck you, Pop, Chicago.
Fizzy drinks,
Pop.
things you shouldn't drink.
It's always pop. Werner's is pop.
Werner's is Werner's.
That is true.
Represent.
Yep.
Amanda has ruined me.
Because you now need Werner's. Werner's, a proud sponsor of Paleo After Dark.
Werner's is amazing. Also, I got him started on watching The West Wing, and now he hates me.
The West
No,
Wing,
The West
a
Wing is
proud
good.
sponsor of Paleo After Dark.
But she's got me watching The West Wing, and then if the game's on, I'll be listening to Lake State play while drinking Werner's.
Lake State, a proud...
She's
God damn it.
ruined me.
This has all been the big con. Like, all along, you really don't have any interest in Werner's or listening to Lake State, but all those little bits in the podcast that keep coming up, they're all part of the long con of our horrible marketing strategy.
XBX XBX 2030.
Yes! Yes! Now we'll get $3 more
We're
per
gonna
1,000
start-
views.
We need to start corporate hashtagging our
Oh,
dialogue.
Jesus Christ.
God. I refuse to use hashtags. That's the dumbest thing.
You know what? I'm going to hashtag this entire podcast, so I'm just going to take a written transcript of the whole thing and then put a hashtag in front of it.
So the title's hashtag Anomalocaris, right?
God, yes.
Oh, God.
Actually, it's I'm going to add sellout somewhere in there, but yes.
God.
Anomalocaris sells out.
Yeah. Hashtag Anomalocaris sellout.
I don't think we can be friends anymore.
Stop trying to use my jokes.
You know what? You know what, Amanda? It's okay, because now we're going to be making so much money on account of the fact that we sold
don't
out.
Have
We
to
don't
be friends.
need
Our
friends.
loathing can bind us together.
It's like Aerosmith. Aerosmith, a proud sponsor of... Oh my-
Aerosmith, the proud sponsors of having friends.
No, of loathing keeping you together as a band. Oh man, how many no one listens to this thing. Like, that's the real thing, right? No one listens to this, so we're not going to get sued, right?
Hang on. I need to read out Kurtz's number, so we'll see how many people listen to this. Oh, sorry, Amanda, I'll open the door.
What? Oh. James didn't hear me knocking, so I texted him, open the bloody door.
I like the fact that I'm getting to you too, because you will use bloody.
Yeah.
Slowly but surely.
I also use sod a lot. Sodding. And I was using bollocks, but he says I said it wrong.
Bollocks.
How do you spell it? That's the question.
Isn't it? Well, doesn't that depend on the context?
No.
No. It's always spelled the same way.
Oh.
B-O.
I thought if it was like...
B-O, not B-U. Bull versus
No, she
ball.
was-
No, I know that.
She was spelling it with an A.
Yeah.
Oh, ball. Okay, bollocks.
Yeah, I thought it was different depending on whether or not you were using it as a curse versus if you screwed something up.
That's also using it as a curse.
How is that not a curse? It's like if I say, oh, fuck,
Well-
versus, oh, fuck!
That's
No.
not...
It's the difference between bollocksing something up and fucking something up. You don't spell fucking with an A.
I'm facking something up.
That just sounds like you're trying to fact check.
Yeah.
Actually, that's one of the favourite cards my mum ever got from her class. Some kid wrote her a class. It's like, "Fuck you for helping me," FAK.
Oh. His heart was in the right place.
Yeah.
It was. It really was. Or in the wrong place, but spelled wrong.
Yeah. Regardless, another good reason not to work with children.
Aw, come on. They're not that bad. They're our future, technically speaking.
That's what frightens me.
Amanda, tomorrow's teacher.
Hey, I'm only teaching college students.
Which are irredeemable by this point.
Yeah,
That's also
you want to kind of get them up to the point when they're kids so that they're decent human beings.
No, that's what I have Leaf for. Because she teaches middle school. I can just work through her. That way I don't have to interact with them.
No, that...
So that's your plan? Just
That's my plan.
Unless you indoctrinate them between the ages of 2 and 4, you're never going to get them to do what you want.
So does that mean that the real actual sponsor of this podcast is Planned Parenthood?
Why don't we just go for Trojan?
Stop them before they start. Trojan condoms. And I just killed Amanda.
That started out well and got better.
I don't think we can do any better than that.
There's the intermediate one, which I can't say on air.
Thanks, you almost killed me.
It's okay. It's just going to be your body in my apartment.
And I was wrong.
Yeah,
we could actually get better. So there we go.
Oh, God.
Well, I think on that note, I've been Kurt.
I've been Amanda.
This is James.
And we're signing off.
And hopefully not getting sued.
By the way, Amanda, you're CEO now, just so you know.
Yeah, no. Expect the sudden...
We're a progressive company. We thought we could have a woman run things.
Seriously,
and
like...
also take the blame for everything.
Expect all of the transference of rights to go to you. I'll still pay for it, but, like, your name's on everything now.
Yep.
Just get to read on iTunes.
Because I'm Jewish doesn't mean I have a good lawyer.
No, it doesn't matter. You're just a patsy.
iTunes is just going to read Amanda Falk as the only member of Paleo After Dark. I thought it will just go John Smith, Jane Smith. I kind of like that idea too. It's really good because we totally said our names in the podcast.
Yep.
If we really want to get sued, we can talk about Scientology.